Hey everyone, it's Will Venus, welcome back to my channel and to episode 3 of Cobble Icons. If, like me, you're crazy about Coronation Street, I would definitely recommend subscribing. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the infamous lady who froze to death in the walk-in freezer, Anne Malone. Anne Malone was introduced to Coronation Street as a recurring character on the 8th of September 1995 by then producer Sue Pritchard as a supervisor at Firman's freezers, which is a bit like... It's a bit like our version of Iceland frozen foods. She was played by Eve Steele. So everyone in Coronation Street land, they seemed to go to the supermarket, you know, like whenever they wanted to fill up their freezer or just do a general restock of their frozen foods. Which, given in the 90s, it was actually a very popular thing to do, and it still is to this day. I remember going along with my mum to places like Iceland and farm foods, being hauled around the shops and finding it extremely boring. Because what child wants to go around to a frozen food store other than to pick up an ice cream? Yeah, and also it just made things generally a bit quicker and easier for busy parents. Anne Malone was born to parents Ed and Sarah Malone in 1975, although I couldn't find an exact birth date. Some of the research that I did, I found it quite sketchy. So first appearing on the 8th of September 1995 as a supervisor within the freezer centre, she would soon raised through the ranks, becoming assistant manager to Corrie Watts. Remember him? Another Cobble icon. She would go on to make appearances in over 100 episodes over a 4-year period. Life as an assistant manager was really frustrating for Anne because she was always wanting to be not the assistant manager, always, wanting to be the actual manager. Never really getting the promotion that she wanted, kind of a bit like always a bridesmaid, never the bride kind of thing. Quickly as she begins to work within this branch, Anne develops a crush on Corrie, which was just not reciprocated by Corrie. It just spurned her advances, and when he did that, she took great offence to this. Not so long after she first appeared in Coronation Street, she starts a relationship with Andy MacDonald, who is the twin brother of Steve, of the infamous MacDonald clan. The MacDonald clan in Corrie, not as in the real MacDonald clan. You know what I mean. But yeah, it was soon evident that she was only dating Andy in a bid to make Corrie jealous, which just didn't happen. Corrie couldn't be less interested, to be honest. Anyway, by that point, Corrie was getting over his wife leaving him. Remember Raquel? She'd walked out on the marriage to Corrie, and it just caused him a great deal of heartache. I would say from memory that Anne wasn't really, in the beginning, really one of the more established characters. She was kind of one of those characters that kind of was just in the vicinity of the other ones. You know how you get like the really established cast members, but she, as a character, she wasn't really part of the main stories, but she will be later on, so keep watching. And so as the character of Anne developed, it soon became evident that she would become one of these kind of bunny boiler type characters, which she, in my opinion, took to the next level, becoming a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde. On the 12th of February 1997, Corrie and Anne were in the back office of the supermarket talking about his marriage failing to Raquel, and Anne seemed to be under the impression that Corrie was like a bit angry at Raquel for leaving him. Whereas in fact, Corrie told Anne that he would just have Raquel back in a heartbeat. If she said she wanted to come back, he would, definitely welcome her with open arms. Which didn't really go down well with Anne. She took great offence to that. When they had that conversation and then she made a swift exit from the office, she had passed another kind of passerby character, shall we say, called Eric Firman, who was the, I think, chairman of the frozen food shop. And as she walked past him, she looked like she was in quite distress and in tears. So when she passed Eric on the way out, the tears were flowing, and Eric was asking Corrie, why is Anne crying? And when Anne then came back into the room, Anne said that she would rather not say what she was crying about, which the impression that I got is that she wanted Eric to be under the impression that Corrie had done something to her, whereas in fact he hadn't done anything to her. But the impression that she was trying to give was that he assaulted her, or was trying to pursue her, like in a romantic or sexual way. So I mean, this was giving Eric the firm impression that there was authenticity to add to the sexual harassment complaint that Anne had lodged against his nephew Leo in recent times. Corrie had a difficult time in convincing the superiors that he was completely innocent of any of the allegations. No one seemed to want to believe him. And as Anne was very good at, turning on the waterworks and lying, that was a tactic that she used as and when it suited her. Corrie kept having to insist, and I quote, "She's off her trolley," which is a little bit of an insider joke, I suppose, when you work in a supermarket, because they have trolleys outside that people put their groceries and things in when they're shopping. Later on that day, Anne came into the office with a cup of tea and biscuits, and this was like by way of a peace offering, and meant to Corrie that she'd actually let Eric Firman think that like the worst had happened. She did it, that she was rotten and unfair, and claiming that she only did it because she really cared about him, which is a funny way to show that you care about someone, by letting their boss think that you're sexually harassing them at every given opportunity. Sorry if you can hear like whimpering and things. My dog sat next to me and he's having a dream. She said that by Corrie not responding to her advances, that in the way that she wanted him to, she was just getting back at him. So yeah, she was actually being that brazen. She knew the best way to get back at Corrie would be to hit him, hit him where it would hurt most. Corrie went on to explain to Anne that he never gave her the impression that there was anything romantic between them. Anne said that she thought that when Corrie's wife left, that there would be a chance for them to start a relationship, and admitting that she'd got it all wrong and it was all in her head. She then went on to say that she was dead ashamed of herself and wanted to make it up to him by buying him a drink or a meal if he was free. Now, Corrie, knowing that he didn't really want to be in the same room alone with her, he just refused. But he didn't point blank refuse. He did it in his usual kind manner by politely saying thanks, but no thanks. Now, I couldn't really find the reason why, but at that particular moment in time, Corrie had lost the use of his car, so Anne asked if he wanted a lift into work the next day, and that was like another gesture of her trying to make things up to Corrie, and she thanked Corrie for being so sweet. And then in the next breath, this is quite unbelievable, she said, "I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to hit me." Why would you say that? If you're a person of sound mind? So yeah, it's not exactly the remarks of someone that's of a kind mind. Discussing it later on that day with his lodger Samantha, she told Corrie, she told Corrie just not to trust anything that she said and just to not be anywhere near her. In early 1997, Anne actually tried to set up Samantha, who was working as a barmaid at the Rovers. Her full name was Samantha Failsworth, by planting something from the supermarket in her handbag and making out that she'd stolen this. So like some sort of item that wasn't paid for. Thankfully, another sort of extra character named Sheila Dixon, she was able to confirm that Samantha hadn't stolen it, and the actual truth was she didn't steal the item. Now, after the firm boss, Eric Firman, found this out, Anne was actually sacked from her job, and yeah, she had to leave the freezer store. Now, it's been said that, I couldn't actually find any footage or written evidence of this, but my impression was that because Samantha was living with Corrie, she got jealous of her, and so she had to get her out of the picture by planting this item from the store in her bag and trying to get her arrested for stealing from the shop. So that's my reasoning, or the only reason that I can think of for that. But there wasn't actually anything to be concerned about, because Samantha was only his lodger. There was nothing to be concerned about. And even if Corrie was, romantically involved with Samantha, he was free to do so. He wasn't divorced, but he was separated from his wife, so he was free to do as he liked. Okay, now going into August 1998, Anne actually arrived back at Firman's freezers, and she'd been appointed to the area as an area manager. So she'd risen through the rank. Heaven knows what she did to obtain the job, though. I can only imagine the kind of things that that character would have done to get to where she wanted to be. And even though a little bit of time had elapsed, it was made clear that Anne's feelings towards Corrie just had not dissipated. She was still infatuated by Corrie, which I can't really see the fascination, to be honest. Not my cup of coffee, but, you know, each to their own. Yeah, so her feelings towards Corrie just hadn't dampened down, and she kind of made, when she returned to the freezer store, she kind of made her presence felt by making Corrie feel really awkward, and at every given opportunity she made work life very difficult for Corrie. She put a lot of blocks in his way, made it just generally really frustrating for him to work there with her. And so once again she tried to pursue Corrie romantically, and once again he said no thank you, not interested. But of course, Anne being Anne, she just took no notice. No was not in her vocabulary. So when she's refused again and said, why won't you have me? And when Corrie said no again, you can imagine what her mood was like. So she decided that she was going to get her own back for Corrie spurring her advances. So remember I said before that Anne really knew how people, well in particular how Corrie ticked. She knew that by hurting him when it would hurt the most, i.e. his job, career, that's how she was going to get back at him, and that's exactly what she did. Because let's not forget, it had taken Corrie the best part of 10 years to get to where he was in his career, and he had to put up with working with the likes of Reg Holsworth in, I think it was Fresco's and Firman's freezers at one point, or was that two different stores altogether? Do let me know in the comments. Yeah, he'd had to put up with all that, and just giving it all he could to get to where he was within his career as a manager. And so when she put her plan into action, if it had worked, it would have destroyed him. But we'll get on to why it didn't work right now. So Anne had came up with this plan that she was... This just sounds like something out of Dynasty or Dallas or whatever, not plain old cup of tea and a pint Coronation Street, Anne had decided that the way that she was going to get back at Corrie was by poisoning food with WD-40. Now, if you don't know what WD-40 is, it's like an industrial sort of metal lubricant. It makes like opening rusty locks and easing, like rusty hinges and things a bit more doable. And she decided that she decided that she was going to poison these fish fingers with WD-40. I know, yeah. Also, WD-40 is quite good for wig making, but that's, for my other channel. If you're interested, I'll link it. So, yeah, she thought of this plan, and Anne knew that she absolutely could not get caught for it. So what she did, she called Trevor, which was one of the store's security guys, and she said to him that she would be going home for the evening. So that kind of covers her if anyone asks, where were you when this poisoning happened, or when this event happened? You know what I mean? Just covering your own back. Like if anyone asked anything. And she'd instructed him to go to the front of the store as an obvious security deterrent. So she just used the excuse to get Trevor, the security guy, to go from the back of the store, which is where the freezer department was. Well, it's all a freezer store, but I mean the stock room for the freezers. And recently she'd kind of got used to using her power, and not in a good way. So she was like quite a bit power mad, and she just said like in a condescending way, we need an obvious deterrent at the front door. Go to the front of the store and do not move. So that also means that no one could get past Trevor to see what Anne was getting up to as well. By this time, Anne was in the security room looking at the cameras to make sure Trevor was doing as he was told. So she'd watched him go from the back of the store and head his way to the front of the store. Then when she's done that, she's seen to open this. It's like a box folder, and inside it contained a pair of latex gloves and the infamous can of WD-40 spray. Now I think other people will think as well that she used the latex gloves so that things like fingerprints or any other evidence wouldn't be left behind if it went as far as a police investigation or like an internal store investigation. So in the next scene, that you see Anne travelling, well, not travelling to, she's walking to the back part of the store, which contains the freezer stock. And this particular area of the freezer stock, it was like a huge, like, it's like a huge walk-in freezer, you know, like it's got a huge door and it's insulated and things. And so she unlocks the freezer because it's got a huge padlock on it, and she unlocks it with her hands fully gloved, so, you know, not to leave any fingerprints behind. And I mean, I used to work in a supermarket, and I'd worked within the freezer about twice in the year that I was there, and I can't remember actually remember the training that I did for working in this area, if I did any, actually. I think I was given a guided tour, but I wasn't given actually any proper training of how to work in the freezer. But anyway, now, the way it worked was, above the freezer door, it was like a red light, and that red light indicated that someone would be inside of the freezer. And so, if anyone saw the red light, that they wouldn't close the door or, God forbid, lock it. And so once inside, she turns off the safety light so that no one on the outside thinks that there's anyone inside the freezer. Are you keeping up with me? I hope I'm keeping up with myself, actually. Yeah, so she goes in, puts the security light off, and she doesn't close the door completely, but she leaves it like sort of ajar, and she goes into the darkened freezer room, and she's, along with the WD-40, she's got like a huge torch so that she can see what she's doing, because you can't see anything inside this freezer. There's no lights inside it, or if there was any lights, then she just wasn't using them, because it would probably bring attention to that there was someone in there when she was just trying to avert any attention. So, like, obviously her plan was to go in as quickly as she could, unnoticed, fingers crossed, spray these fish fingers with some poisonous to consume lubricant, and make her swift getaway, and then her efforts to have Corrie sacked and possibly prosecuted would have been a job done. Which is what she actually did, until it all went horribly, horribly wrong. As she was spraying the that just sounds ridiculous as I'm saying this, but yeah, as she was spraying these fish fingers, she I keep laughing, but she did. It's such a horrible way to die, but, you know, it's karma, I suppose, in my opinion, anyway. Yeah, she could hear someone on the outside of the freezer, but thought, no, it'll just be someone walking past, and she took no notice. But the person that walked past the freezer was Trevor, the security guy who was meant to be at the front of the store. Now, by this time, Trevor had got like a bit annoyed, a bit pissed off at Anne, and he was in, you know, like a terrible mood, shall we say. And because Anne was known for treating the staff members below her pay grade with a lot of contempt, shall we say. Like she felt that she was better than everyone else because of her title, and that's not how you be a manager. A manager is someone that's responsible for looking after people and encouraging them and helping them grow, you know, in any way that they can. A manager isn't someone who barks out orders and say, do this, this and this, or you'll face these consequences. That's not what a manager is. No, that's not what a manager is. So yeah, Trevor was really pissed off at Anne, so yeah, she was a bit power mad, really. I mean, you're only a manager. Get over yourself. So yeah, Trevor came to the area of the shop where the freezer was, and it passed like this, it was like I think you call them a loading cage. You know, like it's these huge, great big metal trolleys that you stack boxes in, you know, boxes of stock and things, and you're able to move them around the store, or if you're using them to, say, unload, you know, like the huge great lorries that food supplies and things come in. And on one of these, stacked really high, was cans of beer. And so he just thought, you know what, F you, Anne. And he helped himself to a can of beer and he said, cheers, Freshco. And I think that's what the company was known as formerly. And then in the next motion, he saw that the freezer door it wasn't closed properly, and there was no red warning light to say that there was someone inside. And so what did he do? He closed the door. He closed the door, popped the padlock on, took his beer, and left the stockroom. Now, meanwhile, back inside the freezer, Anne was looking very pleased with herself because she'd poisoned these fish fingers, and she thought, yeah, this is going to be the end of Curly's career. And it's liberty. Job done. And she was looking really satisfied with herself. You know, glorifying in the fact that she could end someone's career as well as their freedom. But her mistake was she hadn't heard the door being shut and locked. Again, karma. She called out to Trevor, but, you know, Trevor was long gone, and even in that moment when she was screaming to get out, she was calling Trevor a stupid man. You don't call someone stupid that could potentially save your life, do you? No. And so when she realised she couldn't get out, she began to get more and more and more frantic, and the screams started to get louder and more blood-curdling, shall we say. I actually watched this recently, and I felt very uncomfortable watching it, because I can't imagine dying that way. Anyway, yeah, so she was banging at the door and screaming, and then further on she was getting more and more frantic, banging the door trying to get out, but, you know, Trevor was nowhere to be seen. And Trevor had actually returned into the security control room, and on the monitor that would have had the camera fixed to where the freezer was, there was a note left on it, and it read, "Out of order, do not touch," and it was signed A. Malone. So Anne Malone had pretty much, signed her own death warrant, really. And of course, if the security guy is seeing a note on the monitor saying you can't see it, obviously he's not going to see the security camera and someone banging on the door and turning the light, the security light on and off. He wouldn't have seen that, because she was flashing this light in the hope that someone would see it on the camera. But I think that she forgot that she'd left the note on that security monitor to say, "Don't touch," because again, she was thinking, well, I don't want anyone to see me, so I'll just leave this note to say, "Don't look at this monitor," because obviously she would get caught. And again, it cuts back to her, frantically banging on the freezer door. And as it got towards the end of the episode, it was a really frantic, desperate cry, "Get me out of this cold store, I'm going to die," which unfortunately is what happened. So yeah, Anne Malone was the only person in Coronation Street history to die in a walk-in freezer. And so in the next episode, it sees Anne discovered in the walk-in freezer, and she'd frozen to death. And the look in her face, it almost was like she'd resigned herself to that fact, because it was quite a kind of pose. Yeah, because her eyes were open, her hands were held out, and she was almost like in a sort of meditative pose. And in one hand it was like that, but in the other hand was it was a can of WD-40. Yeah. So a word to the wise, use WD-40 very carefully, or you'll end up in horrendous situations. Yeah, so, and eventually her motives were found out, and that was the end of Anne Malone. But this wasn't the last time that she would be remembered. It wasn't actually mentioned by any characters in Coronation Street, but 23 years later, the iconic episode of her death was reflected in an episode, because in 2021, Debbie Webster and her brother Kevin were locked in a big freezer by dodgy businessman Ray Crosby. So this was a bit like a throwback to the 1998 storyline. Fortunately for Kevin and Debbie, they didn't meet the same fate that Anne Malone did. Okay, some trivia about Eve Steele, who played, and she had actually originally auditioned for the role of Maxine Heavey. You remember Maxine? She got married to Ashley and then became Maxine Peacock. Remember him? Yeah, and that role went to Tracy Shaw, of course. After leaving Coronation Street, Eve went on to play roles in Spooks, Fat Friends, Scott and Bailey and Doctors. And in early 2020, Eve Steele went on to star in a new play called The Political History of Smack and Crack in Glasgow's Tron Theatre. In an interview with the Scottish newspaper The Daily Record, she said that she didn't have to, dig too deeply for inspiration for the story, for the character, because she'd actually battled with alcohol and drug addiction in her own life. And of course, this play didn't really get off to a great start, because by the time it was starting to get out there, lockdown happened. But I really do hope that the play is able to continue, when theatres open up again. I feel that, theatres have just been hit so badly by, what's happened this past year. I really enjoy the theatre, and I can't wait to get back to them. I can't wait for all the artists and everyone to get back to theatre. And so that brings me to the end of episode 3 of Cobble Icons. Is there anything that you remember about Anne Malone? Is there anything you want to tell me? Is there anything that I've missed? Do tell me in the comments below. I always love to talk about Corrie. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification bell so that you're notified when I upload every single Sunday at 7:30. And so, with that being said, I shall see you next Sunday for another episode of Cobble Icons. Take care, thanks for watching. Ta-ra, choke.